Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, geeks, nerds, ambassadors everywhere, and welcome to the Ambassadorial Wing and another installment in the Ambassadors Retro Reviews. And hope you all are having a great Sunday night. Hope you all have had a good weekend, and we're wrapping up another weekend here on the Ambassadorial Wing. And tonight, we're going to be kicking back and we're going to be doing a discussion about one of the great granddaddies of anime, Akira. And tonight with me, I've got my two good friends, my two fellow council members from the Council of Ones. You know them, you love them, Mr. Zodrider and Lord Koj. And gentlemen, thank you for being here tonight, and hope you all enjoy yourselves. Hope you all enjoyed the discussion, and gentlemen, hope you all enjoy yourselves as well. So, but yeah, I have had this stream on the books for a long time. Just a matter of making the time to do it, and finally had a free night, and I was talking with the fellas. I was like, "Hey, I'm gonna be talking to Kira," and well, you two were gracious enough to want to join me tonight. So glad you're here. So, without any further ado, let's jump into the discussion. Akira, gentlemen, I yield the floor. It is yours.
Dang, where to begin? I think a good thing to say is that this is like the anime or manga version of Watchmen
Oh,
in a way. And this
yes,
is also a gem to where this is not only the artist and writer of the comic book manga, it's the same person who did the direction and made the film. So, how often do you
Mhm.
get that?
Yes,
It's really
we're
a gem.
talking about Ketsuro Otomo, and
Yep.
Otomo is not only a legend in the manga world, but he's also quite an accomplished filmmaker in his own right. And I have to say that when you look at Akira as an animated film, it is essentially a very, very, very truncated version of the manga. And what people need to
Yes,
understand is that when you look at the manga and you look at the animated film, the anime, you're essentially getting two very different stories because of the truncation that I was mentioning, and
Mhm.
it's hard to look at one without looking at the other.
Hmm.
But what I find so phenomenal about it is the manga is a masterpiece and the anime is also a masterpiece. So when you
Mm-hmm.
look at the fact that I feel like only the creator of the original work could have done the anime justice in the way that he does. So I for one, I mean, it really it's like a win-win as long as you have the original creator on board. I feel like you can accomplish anything at that point. And the fact that he not only did he do the manga, but he actually directed this film too. So
It's
yeah,
like the ultimate adaptation recipe. It's like artistic integrity at its finest.
yes, absolutely.
Well, for myself, I wasn't introduced to Akira until like I was in high school, and we got it on VHS when Blockbuster was still around. And I don't know how many times, and Akira opened up my eyes, honestly, to the world of anime and manga both. I actually have had the opportunity to read the original. I think it was like 6 or 7 part manga that the movie is based on. I was absolutely
Mm.
blown away at just how much more was in the manga compared to the movie. And honestly, I think so. I think, as you gentlemen have said, it is a good thing that the original creator of this work, of this universe, has had involvement in both aspects, both the manga and the anime. And I remember there were certain panels in the manga that were just, I mean, it was in black and white. There was no color at all. And that for
Mhm.
me was, I think, a really cool move. I know most mangas are like that and everything. I recognize that fact. But in the design of the characters, the design of the world of Neo Tokyo and Neo Tokyo in the aftermath of Akira's return in the manga was just absolutely positively stunning. I mean, the buildings are all dilapidated and broken down after Akira is brought back, and you see that final panel where Tetsuo and the rest of the gang that has survived are driving off, and that final panel is just it is absolutely gorgeous. I grew up on like normal American animation as a kid. So my introduction to Japanese anime for me was one of those things that just it blew my mind at the time, and it's still to this day. I have really been very fortunate to have been exposed to anime at a time when it was very transformative for myself. And this movie in and of itself is a masterpiece. And I say that with no hyperbole whatsoever. It is a masterpiece in terms of storytelling and in terms of the art design and of course the sound design as well. Because the music for this movie, the soundtrack alone is it's beautiful. It truly is.
Oh, the music. They went full on John Williams with it too. They got a full on orchestra using like
Mhm.
traditional and acoustic instruments mixed together. Even like with what is it? Ah, that piano, the Phantom of the Opera. Is it accordion?
The harpsichord.
Yeah, harpsichord. Thank you. You even hear
Mhm.
that in the film, and it's just like such an operatic scale too.
Musically,
Musically,
yeah,
wow.
musically, it was essentially ahead of its time
Mhm.
for animation because you literally that soundtrack is just. I had actually gone a couple of months ago. They released the ROM for the Sega Genesis, the unreleased Sega Genesis version of Akira, the video game that was never released. They've released
Dang.
they
Mhm.
dumped the ROM online for you to play it, for you to be able to play it through emulation or on a cartridge if you have that equipment to dump it onto a cartridge. But I was taken aback by the fact when I played this prototype for Akira for Sega Genesis, how faithfully they were able to recreate the music from the movie in
Wow.
in in 16 bit, in 16 bit kind of music. It was fantastic. And the music, I mean, and the music bumps in any format that you play it in. So whether or not you're
Yeah.
listening to it
True that.
in the movie itself, or you're listening to it recreated for a video game that was never released, it's still ahead of its time. And it was one of those things that you literally, the music was as much a character in the movie as any of the beloved characters that we know from the actual film.
And
So
then narrated it too, because the actual lyrics in some of the
yes,
vocals were names and of the characters and imitations of movements going on, because you hear that Kaneda and Tetsuo, because it's to highlight what's happening in the scene as well. So it's very operatic, and kind of like in that Duel of the Fates for Star Wars, where
Oh
it's
yes.
the storytelling is
very
engraved in
much
the
so.
music for the scene in the movie. It's like so connected to what's going on, and that's why I said it's like beautifully operatic, because the story is told through the music and the singing as well.
Well, the really interesting thing for me with this film is the fact that when this movie was brought to America back in, I think, Zod, you said 1988. American audiences weren't prepared for what exactly we were getting ourselves into. Me and I were talking about this before you came in, Koj. Just I think it was in 1985. We got our first like tip of the iceberg with anime with the Robotech series,
Yeah.
and we may do I may do a discussion on that somewhere down the road as well because I loved Robotech as a kid, and
Oh,
not
definitely.
so much as a kid but as a
Same
teenager.
with Voltron and some little mini crossovers.
Oh yeah, and um, when I first watched Akira, I was just like I was taken aback by just how both stunning and brutal the story and the animation was. Because
Mm,
this is not your Saturday morning cartoons, which I was, as I mentioned, had grown up on. This was meant for a more mature and a more intellectually developed audience because this deals
very.
with a lot of different themes that more normal American cartoons just on off at least at the time did not deal with. And there's all sorts of influences going on in this film in terms of the animation design and the art design. And I would watch various as I was watching the movie, I would pick up on, oh, this is from Robotech or this is from Speed Racer because they're using different animation techniques to bring the world to life. You would have panels where the camera would move over the panel, not so much the panel itself being animated, but there would be elements
Mm.
animated into it. And that for me was a really cool thing. I mean, and of course the character design, it's somewhat exaggerated, but it still has that semblance of being a human character. And that for myself also, and especially as towards the end of the film, when Tetsuo goes through his transformation, and it goes very body horror, and you see him
Mm.
becoming bigger and more grotesque and just monstrous. It's it's
Tetsuo's
jaw.
transformation is a thing
Mhm.
of almost it's almost like it's a throwback to some of those really gory horror transformations
Yes.
from the from like the real, from the real early days of like horror films. And
Yes.
essentially
Mhm.
what you're getting from that is you're getting essentially getting brought on the journey to know the magnitude of what this transformation actually is.
Yes.
You're getting the idea that that Tetsuo is evolving to the next stage of
Mhm.
humanity. He's essentially taking humanity into what they will eventually become. In other words,
Mhm.
it's more of like, not only is it an evolution, but it's essentially almost like something that is that like you're almost that it's almost like, human beings always trying to play God. They're essentially always aspiring to, that godly state that we eventually get from Tetsuo. And so
Mhm.
to me, when I look at that, and you look at that, it's almost like, yeah, he basically has to sacrifice his flesh in the most horrid, ungodly way to
Yes.
to evolve and become the next stage in human evolution. It's really phenomenal when you think
And
about it.
visually, they should, because the other little kids said he wasn't ready for that, and so when he was even turning into that big kaiju like grotesque monstrosity, it also resembled the body of an infant because he hasn't grown yet or evolved like at all. In a way, it was very symbolic for how much further he had to go to like control that or really conceive what was going on
Yeah.
with him. It's
Yeah,
very
exactly.
visually poetic too, even in all this like
Yes.
Freddy Krueger like visuals. And yes,
that's a good one though. Freddy Krueger like visuals.
it is.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a throwback to that 80s style of detail. And yeah, the film is very hard to watch. There's a scene with Cowrie that is
Oh yes.
Yeah.
I was just gonna mention
like the Road Warrior, Mad Max 2. Like Road Warrior with that guy who assaulted that one lady, and Mad Max only saw through his binoculars and he killed her with the crossbow. That's hard to watch too, and even
it's hard. It's very hard. It's very
this
hardcore.
Is very mature, very unforgiving.
Yeah,
because the director said that he also liked as far as youth inspiration. He said he was very attuned to the idea that everyone had to leave to go somewhere cool, like Woodstock, and he was a fan like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. So in this like post-apocalyptic type of I don't know, it's a huge futuristic city, but it's
33 years after World War III. So.
Yeah, World War III in 1988, but the timeline ends at 2019. So this is his idea of where we're at too. So for the setting. It's just crazy. It's very mature.
Yeah, it is. And I just want to say a shout out to the chat real quick. Brightest day. Excuse me. Sorry. Brightest day, Jeff B and Marcus Cruz. Gentlemen, good evening. Thank you for being here, and hope you're having a good Sunday. And I will address Marcus's comment very quickly. I don't know a whole lot of details on the whole idea of them doing a live action remake of Akira. I'm on the fence with Taika Waititi doing it. I don't know if he will pay homage to it properly, but until we get some more,
he doesn't have the chops. It's going to take somebody,
like James Cameron or Neil Blomkamp or Takashi Miike to do this.
Yes, it needs some, but you need Takashi Miike could pull it off. But I think Miike, as good of a Japanese director as he is, I think Miike would even struggle with it, which is one of the reasons why. Right. Which is one of the reasons why nobody's ever attempted it, because everybody knows that if you put your balls out and try to do a live action Akira movie and it fails, you'll never work again.
Because the book was the creator, the animation was the creator, and then live action is like, how can you top that strong adaptation?
The latest rumor that has a lot of traction that they've been talking about for the last couple of years is that Otomo himself wants to do a book for book adaptation of the actual manga. He wants to do a straight manga adaptation for Akira, and it's going to be animated. Don't get me wrong; it's not going to be live action, but it's going to be the original Otomo on board with whoever the animation team is, and that is what those of us who are fans of Akira should be looking forward to. I'm at the point where live action for me, I don't care. I don't think they should ever do it, because I just don't think that they've got anybody out there who could grasp the scope of it. And I think everybody knows that, because I often think of this story that Warner Brothers allegedly went to Jordan Peele, who directed Get Out and the new Twilight Zone for Paramount Plus, and said to Jordan Peele, "We want you to direct Akira." And the story I heard was that Jordan Peele laughed in their face and said, "Why me? What makes you think that I can do something like that? Are you crazy?" Listen, this is exactly the kind of thing that I'm thinking about. Warner, movie studios, and unfortunately Warner Brothers owns the rights to Akira in the United States. So if the movie rights, so if there was going to be a live action movie, Warner Brothers would be the ones doing it. But here's the thing. He it's like, it just goes to underscore the fact that, movie executives don't know anything about art. They don't know anything about cinema. And if you're going to somebody like Jordan Peele, who's an accomplished director in his own right, and he's laughing in your face, that's telling you there. Listen, no, nobody's crazy enough to try and attempt a movie like this, because they know if it fails, their career is over. You cannot move beyond that if you ruin Akira.
Because here's the thing. even for people who aren't super familiar with Akira, they recognize, I think they would recognize to some degree or another, just by looking at the artwork of the animation and the manga itself.
My grandmother wasn't into cartoons, and she knew what Akira was. So I'm just saying, it was
so Zod, I think you're not far off the mark here when you say somebody who tries to remake Akira, just like a certain somebody tried to do a live action of Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to take a major hit on their career if they try this and it fails.
Good example too, by the way.
Speaking as an American that grew up in the 1980s and the 1990s, all my friends, we knew about Akira. We had watched Akira on VHS. We would get together at our friends' houses and we would watch it. And we would just be like, holy freaking crap, this thing is awesome beyond all belief. Because the great thing was, this was our first introduction to feature-length anime. And from there, we got we got Ghost in the Shell. We've got House of the Fireflies, which is a very poetic and a very beautiful, but very heart-wrenching anime to watch as well.
You're talking about Grave of the Fireflies. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Yes. Grave of the Fireflies. Yes, that's it. Thank you. Grave of the Fireflies.
That movie is a masterpiece, by the way.
It is.
Just pointing it out.
But I cry every time, man. No lie.
But it's, for us as Westerners, as Americans, it really opened up our eyes to just how beautiful and how powerful the stories that can be told through animation could really be. And Jeff B brought it up perfectly here. Sorry, more cartoons. That was good times. Reasonably sure Speed Racer was Japanese art back in the day. And it still is. It's very.
You had Speed Racer in the 70s, and even an anime that was actually released in the United States that people don't realize this because this was ahead of all of our time. Mm-hmm. Back in the 1960s, they released an animation TV show called 8-Man. And later on in the 90s, they did an animated movie called 8-Man After, and it basically inspired RoboCop and all those movies about cops turning into cyborgs and things like that. But 8-Man was done in the 1960s. It was a black and white anime that aired alongside from the same studio that I believe did Astro Boy back in the 60s. Mm-hmm. And essentially, 8-Man was the story about a cop who is murdered in the line of duty and turned into so he's basically a half human, half cyborg. It's very similar to RoboCop. And he would use, and it's a show that could never be made nowadays because what used to happen with 8-Man is when he would get low on energy or he'd get low powered, he'd have to smoke cigarettes to power up. He'd literally have to light up and smoke cigarettes to power up his.
Steampunk.
It's a hell of an anime. You guys, cool. If you guys ever get a chance to look it up, I think there's a good deal of the old episodes from the 1960s on YouTube. You guys should check it out. It is absolutely fantastic. But it was the precursor to everything that we got moving forward. And then of course we got into Speed Racer, and then in the 80s you started to get things. You got things like Robotech and Voltron, which was based off of Go Lion and all these various things that just
Well, and there was even one before that and everything that was, I think it was originally an anime feature-length film, but it got broken up into a series, and that was Battle of the Planets, or G-Force.
G-Force.
That's a really cool one.
Battle of the Planets was actually, I believe it was Gotcha Man.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was.
It was Gotcha Man in Japan, and then it was translated
That
into
was a film
Battle of
too.
the
Didn't they
Planets.
make that a movie?
They actually did a live action a couple years ago.
Yeah, I want to see it. I didn't get
Oh.
to see that one
It's
yet.
pretty good,
Interesting.
Koji. I got it on my Plex account if you want to check it
Hey,
out. It's a pretty
got
good
a
film.
party.
And just want to send a shout out to Chad Benson's. Good to see you, man. Just watched the new Bond movie, High Octane Action, a storyline to complete Daniel Craig's arc. I do hope Henry Cavill is the next Bond. He has the time. We will see.
Henry Cavill would
Uh,
be good.
I think he'd be very good. And but the great thing about Akira is the fact that it really opened American eyes to the idea that animation and anime could tell more complex stories
Mm.
than what we had gotten before. And I think in a very positive way, in a very good way, it gave other creators here in the States the courage to go out and do these animated films and these animated series that did deal with more mature themes and did go a little harder than your like I mentioned your Saturday morning cartoons or your your after school cartoons back in the way back when and everything when we were all in school. And I will say one thing, and I'm probably going to do a series of streams on this. One of my all-time favorite animes that was kind of a springboard or a evolution in terms of Japanese anime was the Animatrix. And you look at that anthology of films or of shorts, and it is incredibly mature.
Well, yeah,
But
Adam Animatrix took a lot of inspiration from Akira. The Matrix took a lot of inspiration from Akira.
it did.
Mhm.
Yeah, I will
If
agree.
you want to look at something that owes a debt of gratitude to Akira, you can look at Josh Trank's movie Chronicle as well for a more
Mhm.
modern
I've heard of it too.
example of something that
Our
take-
Snyderverse too takes a
or
lot from
and of
Akira.
course the Snyderverse. I was just going to say, yes,
Yeah.
of course. You got to remember Akira influenced a lot. And for example, if we're talking about the Matrix and the Animatrix, it's not just Akira, but you had a lot of other Japanese animated properties that came out at that time. You had a movie called Wicked City, a movie called Demon City Shinjuku. All
Ninja
of these
Scroll.
Ninja Scroll. You had all of these movies
I've
that
heard of Ninja Scroll.
essentially brought to the forefront the kind of things that you were later on going to see in Matrix and Animatrix and that kind of thing. So there's a lot they're still taking inspiration to this day from Akira because Akira was so influential on the industry as a whole worldwide, not just in Japan and not just in the United States, but just all over the place. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, and when this is something I remember from some of the interviews and so on that were done with the Wachowskis at the time of the release of the first Matrix film, they were attempting to make a live action anime in their own way. It wasn't necessarily based on a pre-existing property. It was a original idea by and large. And I think what they were able to do with the first Matrix and the subsequent and the follow-up films was capture that very operatic, that very big story theme or feeling from a lot of the different animes that we have gotten throughout the decades, and not necessarily do a disservice, but pay homage to this art form. Because let's be honest here, anime is an art form all unto itself, and it is beautiful. And getting into the story of Akira itself, as you gentlemen have both mentioned, it's dealing with the concept of humanity evolving beyond the need for a physical body. and the growing pains that can come from that. And you've got Kaneda and Tetsuo, and then of course you've got the young mutated humans, the children or whatever they're called. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head. And they are stuck where they're at in terms of their own evolution. But Akira, which we never actually see, but for maybe one or two glimpses on screen, he made it. He got there. And everybody else is trying to catch up to him. And it's a very interesting journey in a lot of ways. I would equate this in certain respects to a Alice in Wonderland down the rabbit hole kind of journey for Tetsuo and Kaneda and their friends. And then of course you've got it set against the backdrop of a major revolution going on in Neo Tokyo. And you've got these old curmudgeoned old bureaucrats who are trying to hold on to their power. You've got this one general who's caught between a rock and a hard place. And you've got all these different dynamics at play, and they're quite honestly out of their depth in a lot of ways, because Tetsuo's journey in and of itself is very thought-provoking. You've got a kid who's basically a nobody who has been told all his life that he's not going to amount to anything. And in the end, he achieves a state of consciousness that's far beyond anything anybody else can imagine. And that in and of itself I think is a very inspirational story as well. So, but fellas, your thoughts?
I think when you look at the evolution of humanity, again, that being the recurring theme, and I love how you mentioned about all the human normal characters essentially being out of their depth, especially the Colonel, who is caught literally between the bureaucracy and wanting to do the right thing. I never got the idea that the Colonel was like an evil or bad character. I always felt like the Colonel was just stuck in a rut and stuck in a situation again, but behind the bureaucracy and the scientist, and there was always so much nutty stuff going on. And in his mind, he was always just a soldier, so he was always just trying to do the right thing. Exactly. And I feel for that character. I'm very empathetic towards his view and what he's trying to accomplish, because again, like you said, Ambassador, all of these human characters are completely out of their depth, because you're literally witnessing the evolution of humankind through these brilliant young children that have been experimented on. And it's essentially it's a telltale, it's one of those cautionary tales about humanity playing God and trying to speed up the process of taking humanity to the next level. And this is the result. This is what you will get. You see these children who are basically the failed experiments, but not really failed experiments, because they do have powers, they do have abilities, they are starting to succeed beyond what normal humanity can do. There's also a scene in there where there's a kid playing with a kid playing with like a spoon and playing with like electrical parts and stuff. And I think the spoon scene in Akira directly inspired the spoon scene that we saw later on in the Matrix, ironically. But yes, there's a lot of things that when you look at the implications of what's actually going on, it's essentially the scientists playing around with too much too fast. They didn't study it well enough. They wanted to accelerate, they didn't realize what
Mhm.
was going to happen if they continued to play in this god tier like sandbox.
That's why
And
the
that's
general was really angry at the scientists, because the scientists knew the power levels of Tetsuo
right,
before
right,
monitoring
exactly.
skyrocketed, and he didn't tell them
He didn't
in
tell them,
time.
and
And
he
then
doesn't. And here's the
the
thing:
battle happened,
the
and too
scientist
many
doesn't
died.
care, because the scientist is at the point where he's just drunk over everything that can be achieved.
It's
He's
like he
just
got his
thinking,
gold.
yeah, power, power, power. He's almost like, yeah,
Right.
that's a good way to look at it. He's almost
Hmm.
like he's like almost like the little leprechaun at the end of the rainbow, like me gold, me gold. Like it's almost like you have the,
Mhm.
and you see the scientist is just trying to, just trying to protect the people, trying to do what a soldier does. So essentially, you have all of this. You have all this back and forth. I mean, the politics, but the scenarios between the politics and the people that are made in, and then you have the politicians, you have the scapegoats, you have the scientists, and then you just have the regular people. And I think Atomo masters that balance brilliantly between what we're seeing scientifically versus what the real implications would actually be. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, there's a lot
Uh,
of cool. I just want to jump in there because that ties
yeah,
to
go
something I
ahead.
liked seeing in this, where he has this awareness of sociology with the science and the fantasy of it too, and the politics. Because he has this great scene where Ryu goes to the politician who hired him, apparently to go on a mission to, like, save the kids or something, or the test subjects. But then
Hmm.
he goes to the politician who's scrambling to attain all the deeds for his land and all his money, all his greed.
Yeah,
But
the
then
president. He's
yeah,
essentially like the
the
Hmm.
president.
politician, yeah.
Yeah.
And the politician shoots
Yeah.
Ryu, who's a freedom fighter, so he thought. So Ryu, before he dies, he's walking through the alley and he's seeing that all he did was die for the money of this politician. And before he dies, he sees like this riot of all these people running, because there's this underground and sociological cult of a personality going on around Akira, and people are
Yes.
making their own extremist organizations. And before
Hmm.
he dies, he sees that all these people are about to die, running over all the graffiti of the BS that they're following in their extremist groups. So it's kind of like he sees the destruction coming because he saw it too late with him. That's how he died. He unfortunately died for a lie, and everyone else here are going to do it. Because then when everything went crazy with Tetsuo and the government, I mean, not the government, the military, because here I think the military are in charge of the city, because this is in the
Yes.
setting before the Olympics are happening. So that's why in the end they're at the Olympic Coliseum as it was being built. But as soon as the battling happens, everyone's like running for their lives because they're not going to die for their BS until it's too late. It's just like it's a huge warning of like the chaos going on with
Well,
all
and,
this
and
stuff.
and you not only that, and then you also have the religious, the religious
Yeah, those are
groups that
the
are
cult
Hmm.
essentially
crazy ones there.
the
Oh,
cult of Akira, which essentially
Hmm.
is brilliant in and of itself, because it's not
Yes.
unlike a lot of religious zealots you see in the real world as well. It's almost like
Mhm.
you could see how, with the ascension of, and the mythic nature of Akira and what Akira has become, you can almost understand why there's people worshiping and there's people believing that Akira is essentially God, because Akira has literally ascended. So that's what you're gonna get. I mean, there are so many allegories that are just as important to the world we're living in today as they were back then when the movie was made, if not more so nowadays.
yeah, the
Yeah.
cults of personality and these. Ooh, it's dangerous.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the reasons why I have such a love and an appreciation for anime as an art form and as a storytelling art form especially, is because it creates that certain degree of attachment, because you realize you're watching an animated feature or show or whatever And it allows that slight disconnect that allows you to think about these really deep themes and these deep ideas about, and I will say, because both everybody here knows I am a Christian, about religious fanaticism. And religion is a good thing. I'm not just saying that because I am a Christian. I believe that religious belief, Christianity in particular, there's a lot of positives. Do I recognize that there has been a lot of bad stuff that has been carried out in the name of Christianity? Yes, I do. I wholeheartedly recognize that fact, and it saddens me. And I'm not just saying that to play it up. But what they do in Akira with the whole cult of Akira, and you have that one very fanatical leader, and he's dressed the design for that character, I think was intentional, but it was done very well because he's wearing those John Lennon-esque sunglasses. He's got that white robe on like a religious holy man. He's got that big hairdo.
I've got an action figure of him.
You do?
Do you really?
Yeah, a little miniature action figure of him, and I absolutely,
dude, that's cool.
Like, I think he's just a fantastic character because he's so over the top ridiculous.
He's like Jabba the Hutt and the little
the Jabba the Hutt of religious the Jabba the Hutt of religious fanaticism. That's what he is. Like, it's hilarious to me. I'm like,
it is. Well, and I think
he's a fool.
Yeah, essentially, because he eventually gets eaten by his own cult. The cult that he created himself, essentially. He gets destroyed by it.
Yeah.
Collapses on itself.
Yeah, essentially. And, as I was saying, with anime, they're able to take certain risks and tell certain stories that you could not tell in live action. And I think for us as Americans, that's something that we were very unaccustomed to. And you all brought it up earlier and everything. It's early on in the film where you have Cowrie being assaulted, and that is a very difficult scene to watch.
Yeah.
But I think it was very poignant in the movie itself because it shows just how broken down society has become in Neo Tokyo. And it is honestly a cautionary tale for the rest of society as well, because when I will paraphrase this because I don't remember the exact quote, but the general says this, and he's like, our society has become decadent and overblown, and we have lost our way, and Neo Tokyo is essentially like a rottening fruit. And I think that is a very powerful statement by that character, because if we are not careful, our own society could reach that tipping point as well.
Oh, I think we're almost there, Ambassador. I mean, look at what society has become to this day. I mean, we are literally headed directly in the direction of Akira. That's what makes it so poignant and so important, even in today's world, because it literally is a blueprint of what not to do. And we're literally headed in that direction. You can even, and I'm gonna point out some little details that people may have missed. There's a lot of scenarios where, I don't know if you guys notice it, but a lot of the ancillary background characters in Akira are wearing masks. Remember, this movie. Remember, this movie was made back in 1988. Okay, and it foreshadowed the Tokyo, I believe it was like the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. They were advertising. They essentially were. There were a lot of things that were that were foreshadowed, that are foreshadowed in Akira, that if you go in and you look at, there's a lot of things that politically have occurred in the real world. If you really break it down and you look at the manga and you look at the movie that we're talking about right here, there's little Easter eggs and little hints in things that show. It's almost like, I feel to me like not only was Akira ahead of its time, but unfortunately for humanity in a lot of ways, it comes off as a bit of timely and prophetic. And I'm gonna say this:
It was a
Akira,
warning.
Yeah, it is. It's a warning that people just ignored. And here's the thing:
Exactly.
Akira is a movie that even if you're not a fan of, I can say this without any reservation. Even if you're not a fan of anime, even if you're not really a fan of animation or a fan of that genre in general, Akira works as a movie. It literally transcends the genre that it was created in. Like if you sit down and watch this, I remember one of the I had seen Akira first as a child on VHS, just like the rest of you. But the thing with me was when I remember telling my father, I was like, Dad, we gotta watch this movie because I think you'll really like it. And my dad's not a big fan of. My dad doesn't like cartoons and stuff like that. He's not into that stuff. But he sat down with me and he watched Akira and he actually really, really enjoyed it. And he got it. He got a lot of the things that they were going for. And this is the thing. This is a movie that, again, you don't have to be a fan of anime. You don't have to like animation whatsoever, and you can get into it, and you will understand because it's a very decadent, well polished movie that literally hits so many themes. Yeah, hits so many themes over the head and stands on its own in a uniquely amazing way. And it's so funny because I remember seeing like advertisements and stuff for Akira, and eventually me and a cousin of mine, when they did the remaster, when Pioneer did the remaster several years ago, there was a movie theater in Chicago called the Music Box Theater that was showing Akira for one night, and me and my cousin went and seen it, and I actually got to see Akira in a theater. And I was blown away. Now I didn't like that they redubbed the movie, because I grew up with the 1988 Streamline Pictures dubbing for the movie, so that was the dubbing I was expecting.
They got
to hear.
Adam the Black Ranger to do Kaneda's voice.
Yeah, they ended up. I think he plays Vash and Trigun. He's the lead. He does the voice of Trigun. Is the guy that does the voice for Kaneda in the new dub, and so the new dub is different. The new dub tries to be closer to like the dialogue, that the original Japanese dialogue, but just in terms of, I feel like in terms of emotion and in terms of inflection, you kind of lose something, especially when you grow up with seeing a film a certain way, and then they change it. But the thing was, even with the new dub, it doesn't really take away from the movie, because the movie Akira is still Akira, and regardless, like I said, it literally transcends the genre that it comes from. So even if you're not an animation fan, it's a movie that everybody should see, and it gets compared, for some reason, it's very ironic to me, it gets compared to Blade Runner a lot. And I think that's just because of the way. I think that's just the way. I think it's just because of the way Neo Tokyo is lit up, and you essentially have like a lit up city, like Blade Runner, where Blade Runner has that lit up city where you have. So I think it's a lot of. I think it's because you have a lot of Asian aesthetics.
I think that's looking at it from too far of a distance.
I think so too, but it does get a lot of comparisons, and they actually, in a lot of the American trailers, that's what they compared it to. They compared it to
Blade Runner look like Disneyland.
Blade Runner. Yeah, it's like, give me a break. Stop bringing up Blade Runner. I don't
leave Blade Runner alone.
Although we know Otomo was influenced by Blade Runner when he made Akira as well, so we don't have to. So yeah.
Well, and the other interesting thing about Akira is the fact that it does have a very powerful commentary on science run amok. And
Right.
you get a
Yes.
similar now you do get a similar theme, and that's I think was what I would categorize Akira. If you all disagree, that's fine. Not gonna offend me. I would categorize Akira as sci-fi anime. And what good
Oh
sci-fi
yeah.
often does is it comments on or makes you want to this or makes you think about how science can go too far. And in terms of Akira, what we get humanity experimenting on itself to see if it can kickstart an evolutionary springboard forward for the human race. It and y'all mentioned like the old how Tetsuo's transformation at the end mirrored a lot of the old classic horror movie transformations. One of the earliest, and I'll actually be discussing this in a week or so. A lot of the early silent and black and white or horror movies did dabble in this. I mean, if you look at the
Mm.
story, the short story by Robert Louis Stevenson of The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, that is a story about how science can run amok if we let it. And what Akira does is makes us ask the question, are we willing to sacrifice our youngest or ourselves to advance the progress of science? And how far
Yes.
is too and how
Mm.
far is too far? I mean, think about it.
Uh-huh.
Akira, to varying degrees, does ask that question. I think another good franchise within from the 90s in terms of Jurassic Park asks that same question, and I think it does it
Mm.
very poignantly and very poetically. And both the book and the movie that's based off of the book does that very well. And that's one of the other reasons why I wanted to do this discussion tonight is because Akira tackles a concept that we don't often discuss in the sci-fi or pop culture sphere, and that is the concept of human evolution in terms of us doing experimentation to achieve evolution rather than just waiting for the natural course of human evolution to do its thing on its own. And when you see a young man like Tetsuo, who, like I mentioned before, is basically a nobody, and he achieves all this power, he almost becomes a Heidian construct, if that terminology makes sense. In the fact that he has achieved this power, and now he's going to use it to elevate himself and beat down all those who were, in his perspective, cruel or evil to him. So, um,
Well,
gentlemen,
yeah,
your
a good connective tissue to that would be that all throughout Akira, it is established that Tetsuo has a lot of issues because you got to realize Tetsuo was picked on his entire life. So all of these things are all coming to a head, and of course you have his whole rivalry with Kaneda, which essentially, which very much shapes his attitude moving forward when he begins to acquire these abilities and his evolution begins to take shape in that manner. And I want to go back to the scene where he begins his transformation into this grotesque kaiju like monster. And
mm-hmm.
yeah, when he's reaching out to his girlfriend Kaori, and Kaori goes to him, and essentially she gets crushed. That scene was so powerful. I
That
mean,
broke
you
my
could
heart, man.
feel that scene. It was a heartbreaking scene because Kaori was somebody established in the film, someone who genuinely loved and cared for Tetsuo.
I think that was his heart.
Yes, I think she was a representation of his human heart in this movie. Like
Right.
she essentially, I mean, she was, and it was one of the most heartbreaking scenes to me in cinema history because you're looking at it and you're just thinking to yourself, my God, this is his humanity right there. He knew, and you could tell from different scenes. Like there was one scene where he escapes from the hospital and he starts to tell Kaori the story, and he tells her, and he says, and I believe the line is, at least in the streamlined dub, is he looks at Kaori and he says, "Let's run away somewhere, huh? Just you and me." And he's essentially he still at that point he still has his humanity, and he still believes that this is something that he's gonna be able to outrun and move beyond.
What he wants,
and he doesn't realize that no. Tetsuo, you're at a point where it's not going to stop. It's just going to continue exponentially, and you're not going to be able to slow it down. And if you and Kaori try to run away, it's still going to catch up with you. And that's the tragedy of it. The tragedy is he had no idea what he was in for. He had no idea what his abilities were going to become. He had no idea what it essentially was going to amount to when all was said and done. And again, that scene, when he crushes Kaori, is one of the most gut-wrenching scenes ever, because at that moment that in terms of humanity and in terms of the way that he viewed humanity, that's over. And you could feel it. You can feel that he knew when he did that, it devastated him. It was not something that, and he was afraid it was going to happen with his best friend and rival Kaneda as well.
Mm-hmm.
It was, yeah.
Go ahead, Zod.
I was just going to say he didn't want to, he had the rivalry with Kaneda, but he didn't really want to kill Kaneda either.
No.
And that's something that is also missed often by a lot of people. They don't realize that the rivalry between Kaneda and Tetsuo is volatile, but then at the same time, it's really just two friends, almost as close as brothers, basically just coming clean with all their grievances towards each other.
And I think that's another thing that was very strong and profound of why Kaneda was such a hero, because he never stopped being the older brother to Tetsuo.
Exactly.
Exactly. And having that consistency of a relationship, even after all horrendous, powerful, superhero, unexplainable atrocities happen, Kaneda was still like looking at Tetsuo like, "Hey, what are you doing?" He never stopped being his bigger brother, through better or for worse, which was another reminder of his humanity, especially after losing his heart, Kaori. And at the end, before Tetsuo, like, so to speak, goes away like a Vorlon, they reconcile, and he looks back and goes, "Dang, you always were a big brother to me. Thank you." And then they reconciled. And so there's that layer of a story there too. And if it wasn't for Kaneda, even after losing his heart, his friend kind of saved him at the very, very end, even though it was too late.
Well, and this movie does deal with the whole concept of, and I think it does it very well, with the concept of you can have rivalry amongst your friends and your peers, but you can also still have that bond of friendship and that bond of brotherhood with those that you care about and those that are around you.
Because there's always another way, and we just gotta see it and listen. I think Tetsuo found it too late.
Yeah, and that's, you can almost categorize.
Same with Kaneda too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
he's at guilt.
But Kaneda, but see, here's the thing, Kaneda, he's got the guilt, but essentially he'll come to realize that Tetsuo is in a better place now. Tetsuo is going to reside over all of us. I mean, like again, the ending where you see that how Tetsuo has expounded and just become energy, and now he's basically among. He has joined the first ones beyond the rim. He is essentially ascended. Yeah, he's essentially ascended the way, and let's be honest, there's a lot of similarities between what Kaneda ascends to and what, for example, JMS is telling us that humanity will essentially ascend to in Babylon 5.
Yeah, like the last episode of season 4.
Yeah,
this is like very close to that.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm getting at. You're hitting it right on the head. It's essentially the whole idea of humanity moving beyond what we know and joining, essentially joining the gods. Humanity becoming gods themselves.
Well, and there has been a long-standing theory amongst scientists, especially evolutionary theorists, that we will eventually evolve beyond the need for a corporeal body. I mean, it's been told in science fiction for a very long time. If you look at one of the great granddads of old sci-fi, Forbidden Planet, with Leslie Nielsen and Walter Pidgeon.
Excellent.
The krill,
excellent.
The krill on that planet, they ascended to either pure thought or pure energy, and there is a similar line in Akira where they mentioned that Akira had reached pure energy. He had ascended to a point where he no longer needed his corporeal body. I mean, we even get a reference to something similar like that in season 1 of Babylon 5 and everything. This won't be a huge detour with the episode.
Ironheart.
Jason.
Michael Ironside's the actor. Sorry.
No, it's okay, Koji.
Ironheart.
Jason Ironheart. He ascended
Ironheart.
to the level of a being of pure consciousness or pure energy.
And look at Akira. This was, again, this was 1988, right? This is a concept that he's expounding on there. And again, you're looking at, scientifically, that's what they're saying. And eventually they're saying we'll be able to literally download our consciousness into computers, download our consciousness into other bodies, on other vessels. I think it's just very, very telling. And I think Otomo was truly, truly ahead of its time with Akira on so many levels. So many levels.
Well,
because this is beyond Watchmen in a way.
They
have similarities.
Well,
the deconstruction aspect. I think I think that's where I get what you're saying, Koji, about the similarities to Watchmen. It's all it's basically the world is deconstructed in a very, very negative way. I mean, this is not what you want to see. This is not what you want the world to be. But essentially, the world
that's why it's like a warning.
Yeah, the world that's being laid out to you is essentially a cautionary tale, the same as a lot of anime from that time period tried to do. A lot of the anime that was coming out around the time of Akira was going in that direction, giving a lot of, you get a lot of stories that come out in the post-apocalyptic era and that kind of thing. So this is, a lot of it is, and I mean, look at, for example, call back to what Ambassador mentioned earlier about Grave of the Fireflies, a movie that took place during the bombing of Hiroshima at World War II. Yeah. You cannot watch that movie being a human being and not cry like a baby throughout that film. That is one of the most saddest films to ever be released. And if you watch that movie and you don't cry,
something's wrong with you, man.
I question whether or not you're a human being. And that's just heart. Yeah, there's just that movie is all heart. So again, There
Yeah.
you have that, and then you have Akira. You have all of these movies around, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think Grave of the Fireflies might have came out the same year. I think it may have came out
I wouldn't
88.
be
It's an 80s film,
surprised if
man.
it didn't. I think it very well may have.
I have to
But
look it. I don't
you
know.
both brought up Watchmen, and that movie itself, in its own small way, it does offer further commentary on the concept of human evolution, particularly with the story of Dr. Manhattan and
Mm,
his
Yeah, we were correct, guys.
right.
Grave of the Fireflies came out in 88 as well.
Ah,
so 88 was a good year for anime. And
wow.
I will say this. Anime has had a very profound effect on me in a good way,
Nice.
because it really opened my eyes to all the different types of stories that we had been missing out on as an American audience. I'm not saying that American cinema of the 80s was bad by any stretch. It was not. But through the lens, or rather, not through the lens, through the medium of anime, we discovered that more complex stories could be told within the realm of 2D animation than what we had seen up until that point. Because up until that point, up until the mid to late 1980s, yeah, we had gotten exposed to some anime in terms of various anime series that had been exported from Japan over to the States. But Akira and Grave of the Fireflies was our first real introduction to big, expansive, feature length anime. And it really gave us the opportunity to have our horizons broadened. And I think that's one of the other really great things that Akira did for us, is say, here is what this other culture deems as its art. What do you, as a Western audience, think of it? And I would say, across the board, the reception for anime has been very, very positive.
Nice.
I mean, I can't think of anyone that would necessarily have a bad word to say about anime from any decade per se. If anything, I think and this is just a personal opinion, I think in a lot of ways Japanese anime is superior to some of the animated series, animated movies that we have gotten here in the States.
Oh, without a
Not,
doubt.
Mm,
now, I'm not saying that there aren't standouts in terms of American animation. There absolutely is. But as someone who tries to broaden their horizons in terms of the different types of art and media that I consume, Akira was my, well, to quote a great old movie that we all love, it allowed me to take my first step into a larger world.
It was your gateway drug into anime. Let's be honest.
Yes.
I mean, honestly, I used to like Robotech as well, but Robotech was not the influence that Akira was in terms of showing you straight away that you could be blown away by anime. Like if you watch, because once you saw Akira, there was no going back, and you realize that there's going to be more stories. There's going to be other stories, and for a lot of people who seen Akira at that time, now you're getting exposed to everything. You're getting exposed to, Fist of the North Star, Vampire Hunter D, all these classics that were popping up at that time period, and you're just like,
here's one just real quick. Galaxy Train 99.
yes.
So anyway,
Yes.
go ahead, Zod. Go ahead, Zod. Sorry.
No, that was the next one I was going to say. Because that one
Okay.
is really, I mean, that's a great series, and it also spawned several films. So
Yeah.
definitely very, very good. And it has a very Blade Runner-esque vibe to it as well.
Well, and we've mentioned this before, but I think it's very poignant. It's very true here. A lot of American directors or Western directors got influence from Akira, and I mean Ridley Scott, obviously, with Blade Runner, and the Wachowskis with the Matrix series. And I will also say this: I think certain individuals at Lucasfilm, they struck upon, I think, a very good idea in terms of Star Wars Visions. And I know I did my review of Visions a few weeks ago, and I have had the opportunity to go back and rewatch the episodes I really enjoyed. The other ones I've kind of skipped over. But I have to say this as a Star Wars fan, and I will stand by this until they prove me wrong. I think the blending of Japanese style anime and into the Star Wars universe was a step in the right direction, because you can tell very unorthodox and very interesting stories within that medium. And granted, we won't necessarily get the super mature themes that we would in regular non-Star Wars anime, but we will get some very interesting stories, because you have to remember Lucas himself was inspired by one of the greatest Japanese directors of all time, and that was Akira Kurosawa.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
yes.
and I think what the heads at Lucasfilm have done is they have taken that inspiration and they have carried it to the next phase, and that is going into the realm of Japanese anime. I know not. I freely admit this. There were certain episodes of this first season of Visions that I wasn't completely on board for, and I didn't particularly care for. But the ones that really stuck out to me, they really stuck out. And I, for one, am all in support and a proponent for season 2 of Star Wars Visions. I just say this to the people that are in charge of it: take your time, let these studios do their work, because when you do it, they tell truly beautiful stories, and the stories themselves are designed very masterfully. And to me, I think anime artists are among some of the most talented and most passionate artists that still exist in the world today.
Nice.
Sorry, didn't mean to wax philosophical or poetic there or whatever, but just how I felt.
No, that's good. It's just that was deep. I'm just like, I don't know.
I'm sorry.
No, but that was great.
It's been my
great.
day.
Yeah, it's like where do you go from there? It's just kind of
It's like just well done. Well
I kind of felt to me
Sorry.
like the end of the stream. I was like, oh, okay.
Sorry. I don't mean. I was on a stream earlier today with another channel. It's they're called Monkey Nut Punch, and it's a really good crew of guys and everything. They're actually based over in the UK. I think either the UK or Ireland, one of the two. And one of the guys had listened to one of my streams or anything where I was talking about the state of fandom and everything. And he was like, "Hey, you want to come on? We'll do an hour or whatever, and we can discuss this thing called fandom and everything." And there was like 2 or 3 moments just like just now where I would just make a really hard hitting statement, and he'd be like, where the hell do I go from here? And I don't like doing that because I don't want to like brick wall the conversation. That's not my intention here.
No, I get you. I sometimes do that in some chat rooms, and then I can tell no one's saying anything because
Yeah, well,
I killed the chat.
you did it. You did it. You brickballed the conversation. I honestly felt like that was the end of the show. I was like, oh, okay. Well, there's nothing more to add to that. It's like, okay, cool.
That was good. But
It was.
I can add something though.
Yeah, go ahead, Coach A, please.
One thing I like about anime is that they have more genres. Like we're saying, it's not just it's not aimed at one demographic. And in fact, for me, I liked anime because of that. Because I've seen as a kid, I remember two things standing out that were animation that was serious, that was not anime. And I can't remember which came first, but one of them was Ralph Bakshi's Lord of the Rings. That one I saw and I took very seriously. That was like a work of art for my whole life.
Beautiful film.
That film, oh, so great. The TV series ones or whatever, but that film was so amazing that got me reading the books and then going back to that film and still appreciating it. That when the films came out, I was excited to see a lot of those shots in that one carry over to the films. But that was one, and then the second one, I don't know where it is. I don't know what series it is, but it was actually a religious animated series because they did a lot of those in that you could buy on VHS back in the 80s. And one was, I remember this one scene sticking out for me. It's when like this woman, she was going to get stoned by a bunch of guys in the village that said that she cheated on her husband, and then Jesus came up. He was just quiet. Everyone stopped talking. He went to the woman, touched her shoulder, gave her a hug, stood up, and said, "He who had no sin, cast the first stone." And then everyone dropped their rocks and left. And then he went back and hugged the lady. And for some reason, that scene, that's the first scene I saw. It had no violence, no action, but it was a serious scene, animated very seriously, like G.I. Joe, you know, where they stick to kind of true features as much as they can, where the characters have like 5 fingers and all that, because that's expensive. It was at that scale, and it just had a serious tone, and it conveyed something that stuck with me for a long time and kind of made me a better person. So animation and cartoons, they don't have to always be slapstick or comedy or satire.
That's true.
They could actually be taken seriously in non-violence, but also any other tone that I think does more good than
Are you talking about that? Are you talking about that animation, about that anime that came out in 2011, My Last Day?
No, this was a religious one that came out in the 80s. And then it's like I saw those, and then after a while, when I got to anime, I liked anime because anime had more genres taking things seriously, just like those, you know. Because we have some animes that have like they're just slices of life, you know, nothing over the top, nothing violent, and then you take some away. Like, was it Wolf Children? That's a beautiful one, simple fantasy element, but it's just it's just a single mom raising 2 kids on her own. That was just beautiful. I relate with that big time. And I like having, you know, more genres in animation because you can move and touch more people in a good way.
Well, yeah, and you know, and that's the one thing about anime that I've always had a deep appreciation for is the rich stories that can be told in this art form. Because let's all be honest here. Anime is an art form. Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
It has been adapted for feature films and so on, but it is, and first and foremost, has its roots in ancient Japanese culture with the woodblock drawings and everything that had been done way back in those days. I mean, let's be honest here. Japanese culture has been around a heck of a lot longer in terms of their art form than any other culture on the face of the planet, except for maybe ancient Egypt or ancient Greece. Well, maybe more so ancient Egypt with all their with all the hieroglyphs. I can't talk. Hieroglyphs.
There we go. I was going to go then I just said okay.
Hieroglyphs. Yeah. But if you look at the length and breadth of how much art that has come out of Japanese culture, anime is just the next step in the evolution of that. And they take this art form very seriously. And I have an immense amount of respect for that fact. Because to them, every stroke of the brush, every stroke of the pen is done deliberately. Nothing is rushed, nothing is hurried. It is all done with a deliberate pace that you cannot help but have a great amount of appreciation for. Because to do it badly is almost a shame for that person. You do a bad anime, your goose is cooked. Maybe not literally, but figuratively. So when we look back on these great animated features and these animated series, these are people pouring their heart and time and talent into these stories and into this art form. And I myself, who have no artistic ability, like graphic artistic ability, let me put it that way, I stand in awe and in deep respect for these people and their talent and their gifts. And I say with no hyperbole, we are all, I think, we have been blessed by it.
I mean, anime it's influenced my drawing. Like when I draw, because I draw kind of simply, but then I adopted more anime, and it's kind of I found a style that's happy, and my style is definitely influenced by anime and Western. So they're all like equally important to me. I just love it all. It's fantastic. The avenues they go. Anime is just another word for animation. It's beautiful.
Essentially. And Zod, I noticed you popped a couple of things in the private chat. Do you want me? Are you okay if I share these, or you want?
No,
that's
fine.
Private?
That's fine. No, that's fine. I just threw them in there because I was thinking about
Yeah, absolutely. Let me see what
I also have a playlist on my channel, The Must Watch. I put some of an interview by the director of Akira on there.
Dude, thank you for sharing this. This doesn't have any of your private information, does it?
No,
okay.
Not
all
at
right.
all.
I just wanted to make sure. Okay. I just wanted to make sure. Yeah. Thank you for sharing this.
The first link is my interview with Jan Rapson, who voiced Tetsuo in the Streamline Pictures release of Akira. And then the second one was an eBay link for a very, very expensive Tetsuo figure. And then the third link I posted was for that 9-minute Jesus animated movie I was talking about called The Last Day. I think you
Tetsuo Shima. Oh man, that's beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful, but look at how expensive he is, and he doesn't. He never goes down in price. It's always at the very least that much.
Dang.
I've been trying to get that figure for a while, and it's super expensive.
Dang, man,
even
that's a lot.
Jeez,
Kaneda,
he's reasonable. Oh my gosh, the motorcycle! Holy crap!
I've got miniature versions. I've got a miniature Kaneda on the motorcycle, a miniature Tetsuo, and a miniature. I got the miniature Akira cultist, but these are all full-sized, characters that would be real expensive.
Yeah, they're
high quality, but very expensive.
You're gonna pay for it. Yeah, you're gonna pay for it. Holy crap!
Wow,
wowzers. I mean, I've looked at some stuff on my end that I've kind of been some stuff that I've been interested in getting, but it's gonna have to wait. So, well, guys, I think we're gonna go ahead and wrap up here. But Zodrider, Koj, thank you for being here this evening, and I really appreciate you both being here. I appreciate your insights on this, because while I am an anime fan, I am not as knowledgeable as the two of you are. I mean, you know this stuff way better than I do. But thank you for a great discussion, a great stream. I really appreciate it. So,
Very well.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you for the invite. It was a pleasure.
well, yeah, of course.
I mean, that's awesome. I mean,
you all are. Hey, I've said before. I will always say you have been, and always will be my friends. The quote from
Likewise.
another great film. From
another great
film.
film.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, before we close out, have you guys got anything coming up that you want to plug and everything before we wrap up for the evening? So, the floor is yours.
I have an interview that might drop from a friend who interviewed me, but on that, just some more videos on my content, some fun stuff, and the Council of Ones. Be checking that out.
Oh, of course, you got the Council of Ones coming up. I got a late night Q&A interview coming up this Wednesday with my former co-host from the Zod Rider Show from my PSN radio days, Victoria. So that's going to be a really fun show. I'm really excited with all the stuff that we're doing, all the various great collaborations we have going on. Particularly stuff like this with you, Ambassador, is always a lot of fun. Anything where we can all kind of collaborate and do things. And that one of the things I will say, is I really, really appreciate being invited to stuff like this. And it feels good, Ambassador, and it's like I consider you and Koj to be great friends of mine, and I'm very, very glad to be a part of something like this. So thank you again, Ambassador.
You will always
Yes.
have Zarer, you will always have a place here. Once an ambassador, always an ambassador. That will never change. So, and I will, as for myself, we will be back this coming Friday at 3:30 Central Time, back our normal day, our normal time with the Council of One's Babylon 5 review, continue our review of Season 4. I will be starting a new series for the month of October with Thriller Thursdays. We'll be going live this Thursday at 7:30 Central Time. Going to be doing some more horror esque content for the channel.
I got a question for you, Ambassador. I got to ask you, man. Mm-hmm. Since we are all of us here on this panel today are part of the Council of Ones, I have to ask you: are we going to continue? And are we going to do breakdowns when this new CW show comes out? When this new Babylon 5, are we going to do that? Because I kind of have a feeling that as the council, it's kind of our duty to do that.
We most likely will. We may. It just.
We might lose some members who are not into that, or
well,
I don't know.
Well, I know, but what I'm saying is essentially, I feel like it's our duty as the Council of Ones to continue.
I think we must consult the council.
But
I
I'm
will.
Just kidding.
No, and Fiona can come and go as she pleases. She's not beholden to us. If she does not want to participate, that is her prerogative. That is her right, and we will respect it. But yeah, I would probably say most likely we will do reviews of the reboot once it starts, and we will continue on through until we reach the conclusion of both the series and we get through Crusade and we get through the finale of the series with the animated films, or not the animated films, but
guys,
the TV
films. It just hit me. I just got like a burst, like a hit. It feels like a hit in the head. What if this reboot is actually going to be? What if this reboot is actually an animated series?
It could happen,
and not live action.
It could be.
I just thought about that for a minute, like, oh my God, they could actually, but yeah, I don't know. I think we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Prime time on CW, I'd be impressed, but
I would be as well.
Yeah, I would be too. So, yeah. But as I was saying, starting this Thursday with Thriller Thursdays for this month, going to be covering some horror classics and some modern horror for the month of October. This Thursday, I'll be doing a discussion on the Universal monsters, and we'll be talking.
Cool.
Are they still relevant? Are they
No.
what influences have they had upon the pop culture sphere and upon cinema across the board, and just our love and appreciation for the monsters, for the creatures, for the characters.
The BBC put out a pretty good Dracula
Mhm.
series on Netflix. I don't know
Did
if you checked that out.
I
They
don't have
did a pretty
Netflix,
good
so I
adaptation. Oh,
did they? So, and that will, of course, be continuing over the next several weeks. I'll be, like I said, we'll be covering the Universal monsters. I'm going to do a first time review because it'll be my first time viewing the Quiet Place films, A Quiet Place and Quiet Place Part 2. I will be doing a review of John Carpenter's The Thing. Also be doing a review of the two of the very, very ultra retro and the modern remake of House on Haunted Hill. And then to wrap up the month, we're going to be doing a All Hallows Eve watch party for a great little cult classic from the 80s, Critters. So,
Oh,
yeah. Wanted to do something a little bit different this year and everything,
I like
but
Critters.
I
Memory.
think everybody does. So anyway. But anyway, folks, that all being said, make sure if you're not subscribed to Zodbriar and Lord Koj, go check out their channels and definitely hit that subscribe button. And of course, if you come across this stream in this video and you enjoyed the discussion, hit that like, leave your comments down below, and of course, hit the subscribe button and become a part of the Ambassadorial Wing. And with that being said, folks, we hope you have a great night. We will see you later this week. And until next time, these are the Ambassadors, signing off.